Thanks, Susan. Well, the provincial government is cautiously introducing the idea of increasing user fees for park visits. A government-appointed panel is recommending that you be charged every time you go for a hike at a park or on Crown land in order to recoup a $12 million parks operating deficit. And there are compelling arguments on both sides of the debate.
I've heard a lot of people say that they believe that the access to park and wildlife recreation has been undercharged, and if those fees are dedicated to maintaining the opportunities, continuing to protect the parks and wildlife, that they're happy to pay for it.
Main recommendations here, it says there is a general acceptance for paying for recreational use in parks in British Columbia. And this panel didn't really do any extensive public work on that, and I'm wondering how generally accepted it is that people are going to pay money to use the parks in the province.
Well, are BC Parks a standalone profit centre that needs to pay for itself? In many ways, that question goes to the heart of the recommendations made by the province's Recreation Stewardship Panel. Now, the panel points out that it costs about $12 million more to run parks than revenue generated from things like camping fees. It proposes to make up the shortfall by increasing fish licenses, camping fees, and even requiring you to purchase a pass every time you hike on Crown land. There are, however, several troubling aspects of this report, starting with a philosophical outlook that our parks are a standalone profit center. Parks were never envisioned as direct revenue sources for government. They were envisioned as land protected for its raw beauty and its ecological values. That's why we prohibit mining or logging or commercial development within park boundaries. All of those activities are sanctioned on land adjacent to parks. In other words, society has accepted all along that resource revenue is foregone on protected lands. In many cases, government has compensated companies for the loss of mining and logging rights in parks, and if the panel's thoughts are to be carried to their logical conclusion, then we should be asking for that money back. But that's illogical and impractical, as many of the other recommendations contained in this report are. At the end of the day, the report is a reflection on the philosophical approach taken towards parks by our provincial government. Essentially, they see little value in maintaining the integrity of our protected lands and consider them to be a burden on the taxpayer. Far from being a burden, they actually symbolize the unique environmental assets of this province. And commercializing our parks would be akin to India placing golden arches right next to the Taj Mahal, or Egypt locating Coca-Cola billboards right next to the pyramids. Well, that's my view. What's yours? Our question tonight: should fees be used to recover the cost of maintaining our parks? And you can join us in our discussion by calling 1-866-242-2484. You can fax us at 1-250-414-6598, or you can email us at beyondvoices@uvi.com. And before we get to our guest, here's what Beyonders had to say earlier today. What do you think? Do you think that we should be charging user fees in our parks?
No, I definitely think that it should be free and non-taxed because, well, it's benefit for the community. And what if people can't afford, to be paying to go into a park? It's public space. Like, you just can't tax that. That's not what Victoria's about, Our beautiful parks are known, and they should be free to everyone.
What do you think of this idea of the government charging additional user fees to access parks?
I think it's terrible. I think that the parks should be free for everybody. I think that it should be open for everybody to enjoy, not people who can afford it.
Well, joining us today from Vancouver is a gentleman who has fought to create parks all over this province for many, many years, and was known to pound on my door when I had the privilege of being Environment Minister, asking for more green space in this province. Joe Foy joins us from the Western Canada Wilderness Committee. Good to see you, Joe, and thanks for joining us. Pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you, and good to see you too, Mo.
Okay, what's your take on this?
Well, I think the citizens of BC are being ripped off big time, and we want to get off right off the bat that we're starting in the wrong place. Parks pay for themselves and then some. The way they've computed these numbers, they've left out a big source of revenue for the taxpayers of this province, and that's all the businesses that have situated themselves nearby popular parks and the taxes they pay into the provincial coffers. If this government gets away with privatizing our parks and charging fees to access parks and public lands, that'll go into general revenue. Parks already pay for themselves and are a very important part of living here. And anyone who's traveled outside our borders to other countries knows how important parks are to what it means to be a British Columbian.
Now, Joe, you make an interesting point. There are people who invested in motels, restaurants, shops adjacent to parks, so they catch the campers as they're going in or the hikers as they're going in. The government says that they're basing these recommendations on the basis of public consultation. Have you participated in public consultation? And have you heard any comments from other businesses adjacent to parks who would obviously find a competitor where they didn't expect to find a competitor?
Well, this is a great concern of ours, Mo. We have been invited to participate, and we sent representatives to one meeting. But this isn't about our organization, the Western Canada Wilderness Committee. This is about every community across this province and every citizen who not only enjoys our parks, but has a responsibility to hand them down to their future generations, to their kids and their grandkids. There has not been open house public meetings on this issue. There must be open house public meetings because when you think about it, it's not really the government that holds these in trust for future generations. It's the people. The people haven't been consulted on this.
Now, you touched earlier on about sort of logging and mining activity. I mean, to what degree are we seeing this government edge towards that kind of activity in our parks? I mean, surely that's outside the realm of consideration for this administration to allow for that kind of activity. Surely we're talking about minor commercial activity.
Well, no. I mean, one example of we're staring down the twin barrels of logging and mining in a fantastic provincial park is right now this government is really considering opening out the South Chilcotin Mountains Park to mining and logging. This is our newest provincial park. It's 71,400 hectares in size. People have been working to protect it since the 1930s. It's a real centerpiece and a draw to the Whistler area, which is a billion-dollar tourism industry. And unbelievable as it may seem, we're looking in 2 weeks at a decision by this provincial government whether or not to open up that park to those industrial activities.
Well, that surprises me. So what are they planning on doing there? Are they planning on reducing the size of the boundary so as to make the park smaller, allow for activity? Or are they allowing people to go right into the park and to do some logging and mining in there?
Well, their solution, one that they're considering, is rolling the boundaries back because of a very strong lobby by the Mining Association and by a local timber company. Both, I might add, especially timber in the area, is heavily subsidized. And I find it's quite ironic that the provincial government is trying to focus people's attention on the parks, which more than carry their own weight, where we have logging companies which are subsidized up the yin-yang.
Okay, Joe, let's go to some callers who joined us already. Chris from Victoria calls in. Chris, you're on the air.
Hi, I don't pretend to know as much as this other gentleman is commenting on, but what do we pay our taxes for? I mean, do we not pay enough taxes that our parks can be covered for all of BC residents to enjoy?
Okay, over to you, Joe, for a response to that comment.
Well, I stress again, parks are a really, really good idea. And you just talk to the thousands. I mean, tourism is the second biggest industry in the province. You talk to the thousands of people from big operations to mom and pop operations that have bought private land near the parks, that have paid their taxes to their local communities, that are employing people. And they put a lot of taxes into our pockets and more than pay for parks. Now, all of us pay a lot of taxes. And I'll tell you, when you come home from a hard day's work, when you spent weeks and weeks at work, you want to be able to jump on your mountain bike, sit in your canoe, or just go for a walk with your grandkids in your local park. And I'm telling you, that's your right. You paid for that. Your parents and your grandparents handed down that right to access to public lands. It's not costing the provincial coffers. We're being sold a bill of goods.
Okay, I want to pursue some of these fiscal issues in a minute. We got a lot of calls waiting. Dan for Victoria, you'll be next. So we'll be back with those calls, more calls, faxes, and emails right after this break. Stay with us. So is there anything wrong with allowing a small business to rent bikes or canoes at our parks? And what's wrong with allowing someone to set up a restaurant or a hotel within wilderness parks? And should the revenue from these operations, together with the new fees, go to offset the $12 million cost of running our park system? Those are some issues that arise from this report that we're discussing tonight. And our question tonight is this: should fees be used to recover the cost of maintaining our parks? You can call us at 1-866-242-2484. You can fax us at 1-250-414-6598 or email us at beyondvoices@uvi.com. Now, earlier today, I talked to Beyonders. This is what they had to say.
I think it's disgusting, basically. I mean, it's like parks should be available to everybody. They're paid for by your taxes. You shouldn't have to have a certain amount of money to use a provincial park. I mean, that's the whole idea of public. If they weren't public, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I think it's ridiculous. Absolutely. Because there's a lot of people that can't afford to do this expensive family entertainment. When I was little, my parents were broke. We went to parks.
Okay, let's go to some calls. Dan from Victoria. Jones says, Dan, you're on the air.
Yeah, no. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you clear as day.
You kind of faded out there. No, I agree with you. I don't think they should be able to charge fees for parks. And I agree with what the other fellow said about the logging companies. It seems to be there's a lot of revenue that could be more generated out of those people, seeing as they're just cutting and shipping. Nobody's producing any value-added products in this province anymore. If they want to start denuding the forestry in this province and shipping it out, I might as well start charging them a little bit more than stumpage fee and throw some of that dough back into the park system.
Okay, thanks for those comments, Dan. But, Joe, let me ask you this question, which is what the government's argument is all about. According to Mr. Farrell Collins, they're running a $3 billion deficit, almost $4 billion deficit. They have to get out of the deficit and balance their budget. So why shouldn't they be allowed to look at these kinds of options and implement some minor user fees to recover those costs and offset the deficit?
Well, I think you're getting closer to the heart of the matter, Mo, and they should come clean. Charging people to walk on public land isn't about paying for parks. Parks already pay for themselves. It's about trying to grab money to put into the provincial coffers. Much like gasoline tax doesn't pay for roads anymore, most of the tax goes in the general coffers. But look, this is a wrong-headed way to go. You use an example of putting a hotel in a wilderness park. What about the hotel that's already spent the money, bought the land outside the park? The hotel, the restaurant, the business, they have an existing business. Now we're going to insert that into a park, make these other businesses lose. I simply just see a ruination of the parks, moving businesses that already exist outside the parks away, destroying them. If you've got a campsite outside a park that provides the kinds of services already that they're now talking about injecting into our beautiful park system, what happens to you? I think this is a wrong-headed way to go. I think the right way to go is to protect the beautiful nature of our parks, the free access to people. That will encourage our tourism industry, which has already grown to be the second largest industry in the province.
Okay, let's go to Vancouver. Andrew joins us. Andrew, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi. I don't really agree with the parks being charged because they should be enjoyed more, and it's not helping our economy in general.
But, Andrew, what do you say to a government that says it doesn't have the money to be able to do it anymore, to maintain it, that allows toilets, for example, not to be cleaned as often, garbage not to be picked up at all? They're saying, look, we need the money from someplace to do it. I mean, surely they have a legitimate argument there.
Well, they do have a legitimate argument, but also they're the ones, like, we're paying, like, what our taxes are going for. I mean, we're paying so much money, and our economy is not doing so great here in BC. And it's just like, it's like robbing from the poor and giving to the rich is basically what it is.
Okay, our next caller is from Saanich, and I believe it's John. John, you're on the air.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment about the fees there. I think it'd be a good idea if they were going to do it, if they should just put in donation by donation there.
Right. Okay, what do you think about that, Joe? Is that acceptable?
You know what? I've often thought that a donation box would be a great idea, but I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record. People have to understand they're being sold a bill of goods. Parks make money. You know, not keeping up the washrooms in a park would be like not keeping up washrooms in a money-making restaurant, okay? You're going to lose money because people aren't going to want to come to your restaurant. Our parks provide a river of money into the businesses in the local communities, especially rural communities. For every $1, okay, every $1 we put into a provincial park, it generates $10 in the businesses of the surrounding communities. Not keeping up the washrooms or the hiking trails in such a money spinner is absolutely idiotic. I don't know how to say it any plainer.
Okay, but this is a business-savvy government. If you're getting such a good return on your investment, why aren't they investing in parks instead?
Well, I believe it's because of who's supported this government, who's funded this government, and I look to the main donors of the particular party that's in power, the Liberal Party, and you will see a list of the top mining and logging companies of this province. Now, we've got logging companies, for instance, that are shipping out raw logs as fast as they can. And we have whole regions of this province where logging companies are not paying their fair share. And so what I'm saying to the average person in the province is, look, somebody's making a grab for our parks. They're selling us a bill of goods. They're saying our parks cost us too much. That's absolutely false. And if our government isn't going to stand up for our parks, as individuals and families, we do.
You know, it's interesting. I never thought about this before, but maybe we should place a duty on raw log exports and put all that money into maintaining our parks. There's a thought. Hold that thought. We'll go to Pat right after this break. So we'll be back with more calls, faxes, and emails. Stay with us. Well, welcome back. Lots of emails here. Let's go through a few of them. Mr. Richardson writes, the BC Liberal government should not increase costs of visits to parks to pay for tax reductions for the richest people who already have more disposable income than most of the citizens of BC. Here's from Gwen. Please count me in with a no. I do not approve of fees charged to maintain our parks. Thanks, Mo, for all the good work when you were Environment Minister for the NDP. Thanks a lot, Gwen. I appreciate that comment. And here's to George from Powell River. Campbell and his cronies are nuts to institute fees on parks usage. Next, they'll charge us for the air we breathe and any gas we may release. So there's some comments there. Let's go to Pat from Victoria. Pat, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
So, yeah, I'm just in the growing ranks of people who can't believe these guys are doing this for $12 million, which it sounds like a lot, but it's pretty small potatoes in the big budget of the province. And I agree with everything Joe has said. Here's my thought. If and I've experienced this elsewhere, if I visit someplace in Europe and they charge me X amount of money, I find that the local residents or the people belonging to who are residents of that country pay about half or nothing. Yep. And that might be a way to recover these costs. I mean, we've got a lot of Europeans coming in through Calgary. They come on the inside, rent a motorhome, come down the inside passage and visit the BC parks and stay quite a bit. They're great tourists. They can't believe the deal they're getting because I've spoken to them. Why don't we just say, okay, it costs you $25 or $30 and leave everything alone for the rest of us who've already paid for it?
No, that's a good comment. Joe, I want to ask you that. What's wrong with saying to a foreigner, you're going to pay more for a fishing license, more for a hunting license, and if you're camping, when we come around to collect your fees, if you're a foreigner, you're going to pay more?
Well, as someone who just went down to enjoy the U.S. state park system, there were a number of beaches and places I didn't go, not because they were charging me more than a U.S. citizen, but simply because they were charging and I wanted to go for a swim for 15 minutes and there was a charge. Now look, put the shoe on the other foot. We are trying to build a magnificent tourism industry. I think we're doing that. And I think there is room and understanding to charge extra for things like fishing and hunting licenses. But I don't know how I'd feel if at a state park in Washington State I was asked if I was a Canadian citizen and then charged more.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Maybe not for parks, maybe for hunting and fishing licenses. One quick call, John, quickly, from Victoria.
Yes, I firmly believe in no for paying fees for parks. I mean, we already pay for camping as it is. And personally, I think all the stuff this government is doing is pretty nuts. Pretty soon, I mean, if they keep going the way they're at, they're going to be saying goodbye to 3 taxpayers because I'm just sick of this crap and I'm going to leave the country. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, John, for those comments. Joe, quickly, got about 30 seconds. I want to ask you this last question. What are you guys going to do now about this? You're the Western Canada Wilderness Committee. You protest all the time. Are we going to see protests around this issue?
Well, certainly. I mean, this summer we've spent camped out in front of a number of popular provincial parks. And we certainly made a publication and collected many names on a petition. And the one thing I think is most important is that people write, phone, and contact the Minister of Parks, the Honourable Joyce Murray.
Okay, Joe, listen, I got to cut you off there. Thanks a lot. You'll be interested in this. We do a web poll every day after our show. And we ask this very question: should fees be used to recover the cost of maintaining our parks? 24% said yes, 76% said no. Joe Foy, thanks a lot. We'll have you again sometimes on our show here in studio, hopefully in Victoria. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow we're going to be dealing with healthcare issues. Here are tonight's main headlines. See you tomorrow night.